One of the most powerful truths about our minds, which has the power to completely transform how we handle our inner world forever, is the healing thought principle. This great transformation doesn't involve pushing away negative thoughts or pretending they don't exist. This principle is related to the person you need to become inside. For example, if your desire is to find inner peace, the truth is that you need to welcome your dark thoughts before this peace shows up in your life. Otherwise, you'll keep running from one healing method to another, thinking that the problem is having negative thoughts at all. Most people spend their entire lives believing that negative thoughts are the enemy. They think that having thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," or "something bad will happen," means something is wrong with them. They believe that mentally healthy people don't have these thoughts. But what if I told you that this belief is not only wrong, but it's actually keeping you stuck in suffering? What if the very thoughts you're trying to escape are actually trying to set you free? Right now, millions of people are sitting in meditation apps, repeating positive affirmations, taking medication, or going to therapy, all with the same goal: to make their negative thoughts go away. They're treating their minds like a house that needs to be cleaned of unwanted visitors. But here's what nobody talks about. The more you try to get rid of these thoughts, the stronger they become. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more force it builds up to explode back to the surface. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed that the thoughts you fight the hardest are the ones that keep coming back? The more you tell yourself, "Don't think about being rejected," the more rejection scenarios play in your mind. The more you try to stop worrying about your future, the more future fears crowd your thoughts. This isn't because you're weak or broken. This is because you're working against the natural healing system of your mind. Your brain wasn't designed to be a perfect positive thinking machine. It was designed to be a survival and healing system. Every thought that comes up, even the painful ones, serves a purpose. But we've been taught to fear our own minds. We've been told that negative thoughts are signs of mental illness, spiritual failure, or personal weakness. This creates a war inside us where we're constantly fighting against parts of ourselves that are actually trying to help us. So the first learning in this principle is, if you don't change how you see your negative thoughts, nothing in your mental health will change. This is the fundamental truth of the healing thought principle. If you master this principle, every difficult emotion will become your teacher. However, this requires you to face thoughts you've been running from your whole life. If you're really ready for true emotional freedom, this video is for you. Let me share something that might shock you. The people who have found real peace aren't the ones who stopped having negative thoughts. They're the ones who learned to dance with them. They discovered that their darkest thoughts were actually breadcrumbs leading them to their deepest healing. But our culture has taught us the opposite. We're told that mental health means having a quiet, peaceful mind all the time. We're told that spiritual growth means transcending negative emotions. We're told that success means thinking positive thoughts only. But here's the problem with this approach. It creates a split inside you. There's the part of you that has real human experiences like fear, sadness, anger, and doubt. And there's the part of you that thinks you shouldn't have these experiences, so you end up in a constant battle with yourself. You become afraid of your own feelings. You start to believe that having certain thoughts makes you a bad person, or means you're not spiritual enough or mentally strong enough. This internal war is exhausting. You wake up each day hoping your mind will behave. You meditate hoping to quiet the negative voices. You read positive books hoping to reprogram your thoughts. You avoid certain situations because you're afraid they'll trigger unwanted thoughts. You smile on the outside while inside you're terrified of what your mind might do next. You feel like you're carrying a ticking bomb in your head, never knowing when it might go off. The cost of this approach is enormous. You stop trusting yourself because you can't control your thoughts. You feel guilty for having human emotions. You start to believe something is fundamentally wrong with you because you can't maintain positive thinking all the time. You become disconnected from your intuition because you're too busy policing your thoughts. You miss out on deep connections with others because you're afraid they'll see your real thoughts and judge you. But what if the real problem isn't your negative thoughts? What if the real problem is your relationship with your negative thoughts? What if these thoughts aren't trying to destroy you, but are actually trying to save you? What if they're not signs that something is wrong with you, but signs that something is ready to be made right inside you? Here's what changes everything. The moment you stop seeing negative thoughts as the enemy and start seeing them as messengers, your entire inner world transforms. Instead of spending your energy fighting your thoughts, you can use that energy to understand what they're trying to tell you. Instead of feeling ashamed of your thoughts, you can feel curious about them. Instead of being afraid of your mind, you can become friends with it. This shift changes everything because it stops the internal war. When you're not fighting your thoughts anymore, they don't need to fight back. When you're not afraid of them, they don't need to scare you. When you start listening to them, they can finally deliver their message and move on. But this requires courage. It requires you to face the thoughts you've been running from. It requires you to question everything you've been taught about how your mind should work. Your negative thoughts are like messengers that bring you letters about what needs healing inside, your inner pain and your outer struggles. Let me explain what I mean. When you have thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," or "everyone will leave me," these aren't attacks on you. They're showing you old wounds that are ready to be healed. Most people try to kill the messenger instead of reading the message. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a wise old friend who has been watching over you your entire life. This friend has seen every hurt you've experienced, every disappointment you've faced, every time you felt scared or alone or rejected. This friend knows about the time in second grade when the other kids laughed at you. This friend remembers the feeling you had when your parents fought. This friend witnessed the moment you decided you weren't smart enough, pretty enough, or worthy enough. Now imagine that this wise friend loves you so much that they've been keeping track of all these wounds, waiting for the right moment when you're strong enough to heal them. Your negative thoughts are this friend's way of saying, "Hey, remember this old hurt?" You're ready to look at it now. You're strong enough to heal this part of yourself. But instead of seeing it as a loving message, we see it as an attack. When the thought, "I'm not good enough," comes up, it's not your mind trying to make you feel bad. It's your mind saying, "There's a part of you that still believes this from when you were small and hurt. This belief is ready to be healed now." When you think, "Everyone will leave me," it's not a prediction of the future. It's your mind pointing to an old fear that formed when you felt abandoned, and this fear is ready to be released. But we've been taught to shoot the messenger. The moment we have these thoughts, we panic. We think, "I shouldn't be thinking this. This means something is wrong with me. I need to make this stop." So we try positive affirmations to cover up the thought. We distract ourselves with work or entertainment. We judge ourselves for having the thought. We do anything except listen to what the thought is actually trying to tell us. This is like having someone knock on your door with an important message, and instead of opening the door to see what they want, you put on loud music to drown out the knocking. The person doesn't go away, they just knock louder. Your thoughts work the same way. The more you ignore them or fight them, the louder they get. They're not trying to annoy you. They're trying to get your attention for something important. Every negative thought pattern you have is connected to a specific wound or belief that formed at some point in your life. The thought, "I always mess up," might be connected to a time when you made a mistake and felt intense shame. The thought, "I can't trust anyone" might be connected to a time when someone you loved betrayed you. The thought, "I'm not safe" might be connected to a time when you felt threatened or scared. These thoughts aren't random. They're not evidence that you're broken or weak. They're your mind's way of saying, "There's still some pain here that needs attention. There's still a part of you that needs healing. There's still a story you're telling yourself that isn't true anymore." Your thoughts are trying to bring these old wounds into the light so they can finally heal. But healing requires attention. Just like a physical wound needs to be cleaned and cared for, emotional wounds need to be acknowledged and understood. Your negative thoughts are your mind's way of pointing you toward the wounds that are ready for your attention. They're like a map leading you to buried treasure, except the treasure is your own wholeness. Think about it this way. If you had a friend who was carrying around old pain and you could see exactly what they needed to heal to be happy, wouldn't you want to help them see it too? You might gently bring up situations that reminded them of their wound, not to hurt them, but to help them heal. Your mind is doing the same thing for you. It loves you so much that it keeps pointing you toward what needs healing. The beautiful thing about understanding this is that it completely changes your relationship with your thoughts. Instead of feeling attacked by them, you can feel supported by them. Instead of feeling like your mind is against you, you can feel like your mind is for you. Instead of feeling crazy for having these thoughts, you can feel grateful that your mind is wise enough to know what needs healing and brave enough to bring it to your attention. This doesn't mean you have to enjoy negative thoughts or that you should try to have more of them. It means you can stop being afraid of them. It means you can stop feeling guilty for having them. It means you can stop thinking something is wrong with you when they show up. You can start to see them as information instead of evidence of your failure. When you understand that your thoughts are messengers, you also understand that the goal isn't to kill the messenger, it's to receive the message. The goal isn't to stop having thoughts about your wounds. It's to heal the wounds so the thoughts can complete their job. The goal isn't to have a perfect mind. It's to have a healed heart. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work for deep healing. You can't just paste positive thoughts over negative wounds and expect them to heal. You have to actually address the wound. You have to listen to what the negative thought is telling you about what needs attention. You have to be willing to feel the old pain so it can finally be released. But here's the amazing thing. When you start treating your thoughts as messengers instead of enemies, they start to change naturally. When a thought has delivered its message and you've received it, it doesn't need to keep showing up. When a wound has been seen and healed, the thoughts pointing to that wound can finally rest. This is how real healing happens, not by fighting your thoughts, but by understanding what they're trying to heal. Your mind isn't broken. Your thoughts aren't wrong. You're not failing at being human. You're just ready to learn a new way of relating to your inner world. You're ready to discover that your greatest challenges are actually your greatest opportunities for healing. You're ready to find out that the thoughts you've been running from are actually trying to set you free. The first key is understanding that negative thoughts reflect two things: old pain that wants to be released and parts of you that need love. When you think, "I always mess up," your mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's showing you a belief that formed when you were young and scared. Instead of fighting these thoughts, we need to learn what they're trying to tell us. Let's break this down in a way that makes complete sense. Every negative thought you have is like a file folder in your mind's filing cabinet. Each folder contains a story about something that happened to you, a conclusion you made about yourself or the world, and an emotion that got stuck there. When these thoughts come up, your mind is essentially pulling out these old files and saying, "Hey, we need to update this information. This old story isn't serving you anymore." For example, let's say you often think, "I'm not smart enough." This thought didn't just appear out of nowhere. Somewhere in your past, there was a moment or series of moments where you felt stupid, embarrassed, or intellectually inadequate. Maybe a teacher made you feel dumb in front of the class. Maybe your siblings always seemed smarter. Maybe you struggled with learning in a way that made you feel different. In that moment of pain, your young mind made a decision. I'm not smart enough. This decision was actually trying to protect you. Your mind thought, if I believe I'm not smart enough, then I won't try things that might make me look stupid again. I won't put myself in situations where I might fail. I'll be safe from that terrible feeling of embarrassment. So this belief became like a security guard in your mind, constantly watching for situations where you might be exposed as not smart enough. But here's what's fascinating. Your mind only brings up these old beliefs when you're actually ready to question them. The thought, I'm not smart enough, doesn't show up randomly. It shows up when you're considering taking a class, applying for a job, speaking up in a meeting, or doing something that would require you to challenge this old belief. Your mind is essentially saying, before you do this new thing, let's check in with this old story and see if it's still true. This is where most people get it wrong. They think the thought appearing means they really aren't smart enough. But actually, the thought appearing means they're ready to discover that they are smart enough. The thought is showing up because it's time to update that old file. It's time to replace the outdated information with current truth. The same thing happens with thoughts like, nobody loves me. This thought points to a time when you felt unloved, abandoned, or rejected. Maybe your parents were too busy to give you attention. Maybe you felt left out by friends. Maybe someone you loved deeply hurt you. In that moment of pain, your mind made the decision, nobody loves me. And this belief became a way to protect you from getting too close to people who might hurt you again. But when this thought comes up now, it's not because nobody loves you. It comes up when you're getting close to someone new, when you're feeling vulnerable in a relationship, or when you're ready to open your heart more fully. Your mind is saying, before you get closer to this person, let's check this old belief and see if it's still protecting you or if it's actually holding you back from the love you want. Understanding this changes everything because it means your negative thoughts aren't verdicts about who you are. They're invitations to heal who you used to be. They're not statements of fact. They're outdated protection systems that are ready to be updated. They're not attacks on your worth. They're opportunities to reclaim parts of yourself that got lost along the way. Let's look at another common thought pattern. Something bad is going to happen. This thought usually points to times when you felt unsafe, when bad things happened unexpectedly, or when you learned that the world could be dangerous. Your mind created this constant scanning for danger as a way to try to prevent future pain. The thought feels like it's protecting you by keeping you alert to potential threats. But when this thought shows up repeatedly, especially when you're actually safe, it's your mind's way of saying, this old trauma response is ready to be healed. You don't need to live in constant fear anymore. You're safe now, and it's okay to relax this hypervigilance. The thought isn't predicting the future. It's pointing to a past wound that's ready for healing. What makes this even more interesting is that these thoughts often show up stronger when you're making positive changes in your life. When you're growing, healing, or stepping into a better version of yourself, all the old beliefs that contradict this growth get activated. It's like your mind is doing a final check. Are you sure you want to let go of these old protection systems? Are you sure you're ready to believe something new about yourself? This is why people often feel worse before they feel better when they start therapy, spiritual practices, or personal development work. It's not because the healing isn't working. It's because the healing is working so well that all the old wounds are coming up to be finally resolved. Your mind is bringing up everything that needs to be cleared out so you can step fully into who you're becoming. The key insight here is that your negative thoughts aren't random mental pollution. They're not signs that you're mentally ill or spiritually weak. They're not evidence that positive thinking doesn't work for you. They're actually signs that your mind's healing system is functioning perfectly. Your inner wisdom knows exactly what needs to be healed and exactly when you're strong enough to handle healing it. This understanding completely changes how you respond to negative thoughts. Instead of panicking when they show up, you can get curious. Instead of trying to push them away, you can ask what they're trying to show you. Instead of feeling like something is wrong with you, you can feel amazed that your mind is so intelligent and caring that it's constantly working to help you heal and grow. When you start seeing your thoughts this way, you also start to notice patterns. You might realize that your "I'm not good enough" thoughts always show up when you're about to try something new. Your "nobody loves me" thoughts might appear when you're getting closer to someone. Your "something bad will happen" thoughts might come up when life is going really well. These patterns aren't coincidences. They're your mind's way of systematically helping you heal different areas of your life. What you need to understand is that healing happens with a certain delay. When you start welcoming your negative thoughts instead of fighting them, things might feel harder at first. This happens because suppressed emotions are finally safe to come up. You have to stay gentle with yourself long enough for the real healing to happen. Most people give up right when the healing is about to begin. This is probably the most important thing to understand about emotional healing, and it's something that catches almost everyone off guard. When you first start working with your negative thoughts in this new way, when you stop fighting them and start listening to them, you might feel like you're getting worse instead of better. You might have more anxiety, more sadness, more anger, or more fear than you had before. This can be really scary if you don't understand what's happening. Let me explain why this happens. Throughout your life, every time you had a painful emotion that felt too big or too scary to handle, your mind did something very clever. It stored that emotion away for later. It's like your mind has a storage closet where it keeps all the feelings you weren't ready to process when they first came up. Your mind promised you, "Don't worry about feeling this right now. I'll keep it safe, and when you're stronger, we'll deal with it." This storage system actually served you well. When you were 5 years old and your parents divorced, you might not have been able to handle the full depth of that abandonment and fear. So your mind stored most of those feelings away and only let you feel a little bit at a time. When you were 12 and got bullied at school, the complete shame and rage might have been too much, so your mind tucked most of it away. When you were 20 and your heart got broken, the entire grief might have been overwhelming, so your mind saved most of it for when you could handle it better. The problem is that this storage closet eventually gets full, and when you start doing healing work, when you start being kind to your thoughts instead of fighting them, your mind finally feels safe enough to start opening that closet door. It's like your mind says, "Oh good, now you're ready to feel those feelings from when you were 5, and those feelings from when you were 12, and those feelings from when you were 20. Let's get all of this cleaned out." This is why healing often feels like everything is falling apart at first. You're not falling apart, you're actually coming together. But all those stored emotions need somewhere to go, and the only way out is through. Your mind has been waiting for years, sometimes decades, for you to be strong enough to feel these feelings and heal these wounds. Now that you're finally ready, it's like emotional floodgates opening. Understanding this timeline is crucial because most people interpret feeling worse as a sign that they're doing something wrong. They think, "I started meditating and now I'm more anxious than before. Meditation doesn't work for me." Or, "I started therapy and now I'm crying all the time. Therapy is making me worse." Or, I started practicing self-love and now I feel more depressed. This positive stuff doesn't work. But feeling worse at the beginning isn't a sign that the healing isn't working. It's a sign that the healing is working so well that your mind finally trusts you enough to let you feel everything you've been carrying. It's actually a huge compliment from your unconscious mind. Your inner wisdom is saying, you're finally strong enough to handle this. You're finally ready to be free from these old wounds. Think of it like cleaning out a house that's been lived in for decades. When you first start pulling everything out of the closets and storage rooms, the house looks messier than it did before you started cleaning. There's stuff everywhere. It looks chaotic and overwhelming. But this mess is necessary to get to the cleanliness on the other side. You can't organize a closet without first pulling everything out and looking at what you have. Your emotional healing works the same way. You can't heal wounds without first feeling them. You can't release old pain without first acknowledging it. You can't update old beliefs without first looking at them clearly. This requires bringing everything up to the surface, which temporarily makes things feel messier and more intense. The key is understanding that this intensity has a purpose and an endpoint. You're not going to feel overwhelmed forever. You're not going to be flooded with emotions for the rest of your life. These feelings are coming up to be released, not to stay. They're like clouds passing through the sky of your consciousness. They look big and dark while they're passing through, but they don't stay forever. Most people give up during this phase because they don't understand what's happening. They think the goal is to feel better immediately, so when they feel worse, they assume they're doing something wrong. They go back to their old ways of fighting their thoughts, suppressing their emotions, and staying busy enough to avoid feeling anything deep. They return to the storage closet approach, which gives them immediate relief, but keeps them stuck in the long run. But if you can stay with the process, if you can be gentle with yourself while these old emotions move through you, something beautiful happens. The intensity starts to decrease. The overwhelming feelings start to settle. The thoughts that used to scare you start to feel less powerful. You begin to feel clearer, lighter, and more peaceful than you ever have before. This is because you're not just managing your emotions anymore, you're actually resolving them. You're not just coping with your thoughts, you're healing the wounds that created them. You're not just surviving your inner world, you're transforming it. But this transformation requires going through the temporary discomfort of feeling everything you've been avoiding. The timeline for this process is different for everyone. Some people feel worse for a few days or weeks. Others might have months of intensified emotions. It depends on how much you've stored away, how long you've been storing it, and how ready you are to feel it all. But everyone who stays with the process eventually comes out the other side feeling more whole, more peaceful, and more free than they ever imagined possible. The secret is to expect this phase and prepare for it mentally. When the difficult emotions come up, instead of thinking something is wrong, you can think something is being made right. Instead of panicking, you can remind yourself that this is exactly what healing looks like. Instead of giving up, you can stay curious about what these emotions are trying to show you. During this phase, it's especially important to be extra gentle with yourself. Get more rest, spend time in nature, do things that comfort you. Ask for support from friends or professionals who understand the healing process. Remember that feeling everything doesn't mean drowning in everything. You can feel your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can acknowledge your thoughts without believing they're absolutely true. Your mind doesn't reflect whether thoughts are good or bad, but shows you what needs attention. If you keep saying, "I hate these anxious thoughts," you're missing the point. The anxiety isn't the enemy. It's pointing to something that needs care. Instead of hating the feeling, ask, "What is this trying to show me?" Focus on what wants to be healed, not on making the thoughts go away. This is where most people get stuck in their healing journey. They learn that negative thoughts might have messages, but they still try to get rid of the thoughts instead of understanding the messages. It's like getting a letter in the mail, reading the return address, and then throwing the letter away without opening it. You know who sent it, but you never find out what they wanted to tell you. Let's break down how to actually read the messages your thoughts are sending you. Every negative thought has 3 layers: the surface thought, the underlying fear, and the core wound. Most people only hear the surface thought and react to that. But the real healing happens when you dig down to the core wound that's creating the thought in the first place. Let's take anxiety as an example. The surface thought might be, what if I mess up this presentation? Most people hear this thought and either try to reassure themselves, you'll do fine, or catastrophize, I probably will mess up. But neither of these responses addresses what the thought is actually trying to tell you. The underlying fear behind, what if I mess up this presentation, might be, what if people judge me? Or, what if I look stupid? Or, what if I disappoint everyone? This fear is closer to the real message, but it's still not the deepest layer. The underlying fear is what the surface thought is trying to protect you from, but it's not the original wound. The core wound might be something like, I learned that my worth depends on being perfect, or I decided that making mistakes means I'm not lovable, or I believe that people will reject me if they see my flaws. This core wound is usually something that formed early in your life when you were too young to understand that one experience didn't define your entire worth. When you dig down to this core wound, you can finally address what's really driving the anxious thoughts. The thought, what if I mess up this presentation, isn't really about the presentation at all. It's about a young part of you that learned to equate mistakes with being unlovable. Once you understand this, you can heal the real wound instead of just managing the symptoms. Here's how to practice reading these deeper messages. When a negative thought comes up, instead of immediately trying to change it or get rid of it, pause and get curious. Ask yourself, what is this thought trying to protect me from? Then listen without judgment. Don't try to fix anything yet, just listen. Let's say the thought is, I'm going to end up alone. Instead of panicking or trying to prove this thought wrong, ask, what is this thought trying to protect me from? The answer might be, it's trying to protect me from getting too close to someone who might leave me. Then ask, when did I first learn that people leave? The answer might take you back to a childhood experience of abandonment or rejection. Once you understand the original wound, you can speak directly to that scared part of yourself. You might say something like, I understand why you're scared of being abandoned. That really hurt when it happened before. But you're not that little kid anymore. You can handle relationships differently now. You don't have to protect yourself by pushing people away before they can leave. This kind of inner dialogue is incredibly healing because you're addressing the root cause instead of just the symptoms. You're not trying to convince yourself that you won't end up alone. You're healing the wound that makes aloneness feel so terrifying in the first place. Another example, the thought, I'm not good enough, might have an underlying fear of, I'll be rejected if people see who I really am. The core wound might be, I learned that I have to earn love by being perfect. Once you understand this, you can start healing the wound by learning that love doesn't have to be earned. It can be freely given and received. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it works with your mind instead of against it. Instead of fighting your thoughts, you're collaborating with them. Instead of seeing them as problems to solve, you're seeing them as puzzles to understand. Instead of feeling like your mind is against you, you start to feel like your mind is working with you toward your healing. This process also helps you understand why certain thoughts keep coming back even after you've tried to deal with them. If you only address the surface thought without healing the core wound, the thought will keep returning because the wound is still there creating it. It's like trying to stop a leak by catching the water instead of fixing the pipe. You have to fix the source of the problem, not just manage its effects. As you practice this deeper listening, you'll start to notice that your thoughts become less scary and more informative. Instead of feeling attacked by them, you'll feel curious about them. Instead of feeling like they're telling you absolute truths about yourself, you'll understand that they're showing you old beliefs that are ready to be updated. You'll also notice that different thoughts point to different wounds. Your "I'm not smart enough" thoughts might point to academic shame from childhood. Your "I can't trust anyone" thoughts might point to betrayal trauma. Your "I'm not safe" thoughts might point to experiences where you felt threatened or powerless. Each thought pattern is like a different messenger bringing you information about a different area that's ready for healing. The goal isn't to analyze every thought you have. That would be exhausting and counterproductive. The goal is to develop a new relationship with your thoughts where you see them as information instead of threats. When a thought feels particularly strong or keeps repeating, that's when you know it has an important message for you. That's when it's worth sitting down and really listening to what it's trying to tell you about what needs healing in your life. Most people get trapped in this cycle. They observe their negative thoughts, feel bad about having them, then try to get rid of them, which makes more negative thoughts. But healing works backwards. First, you choose to see thoughts as helpers. Then when difficult thoughts come, instead of observing them as problems, you welcome them as information. You look for what they're teaching you, and slowly the thoughts transform because they've done their job. Let me paint a picture of how most people's relationship with their thoughts actually works, because once you see this pattern clearly, you'll understand why everything you've tried before hasn't created lasting change. It starts with what I call the observation trap. You're going about your day when suddenly a negative thought pops up. Maybe "I'm going to fail at this," or "people think I'm weird," or "I can't handle this situation." The moment you notice this thought, something interesting happens. You immediately judge yourself for having it. You think something like, "Great, there I go again with the negative thinking," or "I shouldn't be thinking this way," or "Why can't I just be positive like other people?" This judgment creates a second layer of negativity on top of the original thought. Now you're not just dealing with "I'm going to fail at this." You're also dealing with "I'm a failure for thinking I'm going to fail." From there, most people jump into action mode. They try to replace the negative thought with a positive one. They repeat affirmations. They distract themselves with work or entertainment. They call a friend to get reassurance. They try meditation apps or breathing exercises. Basically, they do anything they can think of to make the thought go away as quickly as possible. And here's the thing, sometimes these strategies work temporarily. The thought might disappear for a while. You might feel better for a few hours or even a few days. But then, almost inevitably, the same thought or a similar one comes back. Often it comes back even stronger than before, because now it has to compete with all your resistance to get your attention. This creates what I call the thought fighting cycle. You have a negative thought, you fight it, it goes away temporarily, then it comes back stronger, so you fight it harder, which makes it go away for a shorter time. Then it returns even more intensely. Each round of this cycle leaves you feeling more frustrated, more hopeless, and more convinced that something is fundamentally wrong with your mind. After enough rounds of this cycle, many people start to believe that they're just negative people, or that they have broken brains, or that positive thinking just doesn't work for them. They resign themselves to a life of constantly managing their thoughts, always on guard against the next mental attack. never feeling truly peaceful or free in their own minds. But here's what's actually happening in this cycle that nobody talks about. Every time you fight a thought, you're sending a message to your unconscious mind that this thought is dangerous. You're teaching your brain that these thoughts are threats that need to be watched for and protected against. So your brain, trying to help you, becomes hyper-vigilant about these thoughts. It starts scanning for them constantly, which actually makes them appear more often. It's like telling someone, "Don't think about pink elephants." The moment you say that, pink elephants are all they can think about. Your brain doesn't understand the word "don't" very well. When you tell it don't think negative thoughts, what it hears is think negative thoughts. When you tell it don't worry, what it hears is worry. When you tell it don't be anxious, what it hears is be anxious. This is why the fighting approach never works long term. You're actually training your brain to produce more of what you're trying to eliminate. You're creating a pattern where your thoughts feel like enemies that need to be defeated, which keeps you in a constant state of internal warfare. The healing cycle works completely differently. Instead of starting with observation and judgment, it starts with intention and acceptance. Before any difficult thoughts even show up, you make a conscious decision to see them as messengers rather than threats. You set an intention to be curious about your thoughts rather than afraid of them. You choose to believe that your mind is trying to help you, even when it doesn't feel that way. Then, when a negative thought appears, instead of immediately judging it or trying to change it, you practice something revolutionary. You welcome it. You say something like, "Hello, thought. I see you there. What are you trying to tell me?" This might feel strange at first, especially if you've spent years trying to push these thoughts away. But this simple shift changes everything. When you welcome a thought instead of fighting it, several things happen. First, the thought loses its power to scare you. It's hard to be terrified of something you're actively welcoming. Second, you stop the judgment cycle before it starts. You're not adding shame and frustration on top of the original thought. Third, you create space to actually hear what the thought is trying to communicate. From this place of curiosity rather than resistance, you can start to explore what the thought is really about. You can ask questions like, "What is this thought trying to protect me from?" Or, "What old hurt is this pointing to?" Or, "What does this scared part of me need right now?" These questions help you get to the root of the thought instead of just managing its symptoms. As you practice this welcoming approach, something beautiful happens. The thoughts start to feel less frequent and less intense. This happens because they're finally able to deliver their messages. When a thought's message has been received and the underlying wound has been addressed, the thought doesn't need to keep showing up. It has completed its job. But here's the key. This transformation takes time and practice. You can't welcome your thoughts once or twice and expect everything to change immediately. You're literally rewiring decades of mental patterns. You're teaching your brain a completely new way of relating to its own activity. This requires patience, consistency, and a lot of self-compassion. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it works with your natural healing system instead of against it. Your mind actually wants to heal. Your unconscious actually wants to resolve old wounds and update outdated beliefs. When you stop fighting this natural process and start supporting it, healing happens much more efficiently and permanently. This doesn't mean you become passive or that you just accept everything your thoughts tell you as truth. It means you become curious about why these thoughts exist and what they're trying to accomplish. You become an investigator of your own inner world rather than a warrior fighting against it. Now I want you to try this simple exercise. Next time you have a negative thought, don't push it away. Instead say, "Thank you for trying to protect me. What do you want me to know?" Then listen without judgment. Ask yourself, What old hurt is this thought pointing to? What part of me needs love right now? This practice has the power to completely change your relationship with your own mind. This exercise might sound too simple to be effective, but simplicity is actually its power. Most healing practices fail because they're too complicated or require too much time or energy. This practice can be done anywhere, anytime, in just a few moments. You don't need special equipment, a quiet space, or hours of free time. You just need the willingness to treat your thoughts as friends instead of enemies. Let me walk you through exactly how to do this practice, step by step, so you can start using it immediately. The next time you notice a negative thought, and you will notice one, probably within the next few hours, resist your normal impulse to push it away, argue with it, or distract yourself from it. Instead, take a deep breath and pause for just a moment. In that pause, speak directly to the thought as if it were a person trying to help you. You can do this silently in your mind or out loud if you're alone. Say something like, "Hello, thought. I see you there. Thank you for trying to protect me. What do you want me to know?" The exact words don't matter as much as the attitude behind them. You're approaching your thought with curiosity and gratitude instead of fear and resistance. Then, and this is crucial, actually listen for an answer. Don't immediately jump to conclusions or try to analyze the thought. Just listen with the same attention you would give to a friend who is trying to tell you something important. You might be surprised by what comes up. The thought, "I'm going to fail," might reveal, "I'm scared of disappointing people." The thought, "Nobody likes me," might reveal, "I feel lonely and want connection." The thought, "I can't handle this," might reveal, "I feel overwhelmed and need support." Once you hear what the thought is really saying, ask a follow-up question. What old hurt is this pointing to? Or, when did I first learn to feel this way? This question helps you trace the thought back to its origin. You might remember a specific incident from childhood, or you might just get a general sense of when this belief first formed. Either way is fine. You're not trying to become a perfect therapist for yourself. You're just trying to understand where this thought came from. Finally, ask, what part of me needs love right now? This question shifts you from analysis mode into healing mode. Instead of just understanding the thought, you're now addressing the emotional need underneath it. You might realize that the scared little kid inside you needs reassurance. You might see that the part of you that feels rejected needs acceptance. You might understand that the part of you that feels overwhelmed needs compassion and support. The power of this practice lies in what it does to your nervous system. When you fight your thoughts, your body goes into stress mode. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles tense up. You're literally in a state of internal warfare, which is exhausting and unsustainable. But when you welcome your thoughts, your nervous system relaxes. Your body recognizes that there's no threat to fight against. Your heart rate slows down. Your breathing deepens. Your muscles soften. You shift from a state of internal conflict to a state of internal harmony. This physiological change is just as important as the psychological change. Let me give you some specific examples of how this practice might sound in real situations. Let's say you're at work and you suddenly think, "I'm going to get fired." Instead of panicking or trying to convince yourself that you're valuable to the company, you pause and say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, thought. What do you want me to know?" You might hear something like, "I'm scared that I'm not performing well enough," or "I'm worried about financial security," or "I feel like I don't belong here." Then you ask, what old hurt is this pointing to? And you might remember being criticized by a teacher in school, or feeling like you didn't fit in with your family, or experiencing financial stress as a child. Finally, you ask, what part of me needs love right now? and you might realize that the part of you that learned to tie your worth to your performance needs reassurance that you're valuable just for being you. Or the part of you that feels insecure needs to be reminded of all the things you do well. Or the part of you that feels unsafe needs to know that you have skills and resources to handle whatever comes. This entire process might take 2 minutes, but it accomplishes something that hours of positive thinking or anxiety management often can't. It addresses the root cause of the thought instead of just its symptoms. You're not just managing your fear of being fired. You're healing the underlying insecurity that makes job loss feel so terrifying. Here's another example. Let's say you're scrolling through social media and suddenly think, everyone else has a better life than me. Instead of feeling jealous or inadequate, you pause and welcome the thought. Thank you for trying to protect me. What do you want me to know? You might hear, I feel left out, or I'm worried I'm not doing enough with my life, or I feel lonely and disconnected. When you ask about the old hurt, you might remember feeling like you never quite fit in with other kids, or feeling pressure from your parents to achieve more, or experiencing periods of isolation that made you feel forgotten. When you ask what part of you needs love, you might realize that the part of you that feels left out needs to remember all the people who do care about you, or the part that feels inadequate needs to be reminded of your unique path and timing. Or the part that feels lonely needs to reach out for real connection instead of consuming curated online content. As you practice this exercise regularly, you'll start to notice several changes. First, your thoughts will start to feel less scary and more informative. You'll begin to see them as data about your inner world rather than verdicts about your worth. Second, you'll develop a much more compassionate relationship with yourself. Instead of being your own worst critic, you'll become your own best friend and advocate. Third, you'll start to notice patterns in your thoughts that point to specific areas that need healing. You might realize that most of your anxious thoughts stem from a fear of rejection, or that your angry thoughts usually point to feeling powerless, or that your sad thoughts often connect to grief you haven't fully processed. Most importantly, you'll develop a sense of inner safety that might be completely new for you. When you know that you can handle any thought that comes up, when you know that no thought is too scary or too overwhelming, you can relax in a way that might feel revolutionary. You can stop being afraid of your own mind and start trusting your own inner wisdom. I'm sharing this because I lived in fear of my own thoughts for years. I tried meditation, positive thinking, everything to make the dark thoughts stop, but nothing worked until I learned this principle. When I started welcoming my negative thoughts as teachers, everything changed. The thoughts that scared me most were showing me exactly what needed healing. This isn't just theory. This actually works when you give it time. For most of my early adult life, I was what you might call a professional thought fighter. I had read every self-help book about positive thinking. I knew all the techniques for replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. I practiced affirmations every morning. I had meditation apps on my phone. I went to therapy regularly. I was doing everything right, according to all the experts, but I was still miserable inside my own head. The thoughts I struggled with most were about not being good enough. No matter what I accomplished or how much validation I received from others, there was this persistent voice in my head that said, "You're just fooling everyone. You don't really know what you're doing. Eventually, everyone will figure out that you're a fraud." I now know these are called imposter syndrome thoughts, but back then, I just thought it meant I was deeply flawed. I tried everything to make these thoughts go away. I would repeat affirmations like, "I am confident and capable" 50 times every morning. When the negative thoughts came up during the day, I would immediately replace them with positive statements about my abilities and achievements. I kept a gratitude journal where I wrote down everything I was thankful for, hoping it would rewire my brain to be more positive. Sometimes these techniques would work for a few hours or even a few days. I would feel better about myself and think I had finally defeated the negative thinking. But then something would happen. I would make a small mistake at work, or someone would give me constructive feedback, or I would compare myself to someone else's success, and all the negative thoughts would come flooding back, often stronger than before. What was most frustrating was that the positive thinking approach actually seemed to make the negative thoughts more intense. It was like the harder I tried to convince myself I was good enough, the louder the voice became that said I wasn't. I felt like I was in a constant battle with my own mind, and I was losing. The turning point came during a particularly difficult period when I was starting a new job that felt way beyond my skill level. The imposter syndrome thoughts were constant and overwhelming. I would wake up every morning with anxiety about being found out. I would go to bed every night replaying every mistake I had made that day. I was exhausted from fighting my own thoughts all the time. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of internal warfare, I was so tired of fighting that I just gave up. I remember sitting on my couch and saying out loud to my thoughts, "Okay, you win. I don't have the energy to fight you anymore. What do you want?" It wasn't a conscious technique. I was just completely depleted from the constant struggle. What happened next changed everything. Instead of the thoughts getting louder or more vicious like I expected, they seemed to soften. It was like they had been waiting for me to stop running and actually listen. For the first time, instead of hearing "you're not good enough" as an attack, I heard it as information. I heard the fear underneath it. I heard the young part of me that learned to believe this about myself. I started asking questions instead of making arguments. Instead of, "That's not true, I am good enough," I asked, "When did I first learn to feel this way about myself?" Suddenly, I was remembering being in 3rd grade and struggling with math while other kids seemed to get it easily. I remembered the shame of being moved to the slower reading group. I remembered my dad's disappointed face when I brought home a report card that wasn't perfect. For the first time, I understood that these thoughts weren't random attacks on my character. They were protective mechanisms that formed when I was young and scared. My mind had learned that if I constantly worried about not being good enough, maybe I would work harder and avoid the pain of disappointing people. The thoughts weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to help me in the only way they knew how. This realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking because I could see how much pain that young part of me had carried for so many years. Liberating because I finally understood that my thoughts weren't evidence of my inadequacy. They were evidence of my mind's attempt to protect me from pain. From that night forward, I started treating my negative thoughts like messengers instead of enemies. When the "you're not good enough" thought would come up, instead of fighting it, I would say, "Thank you for trying to protect me. I understand you're scared I'll disappoint people or fail somehow, but I'm not that scared kid anymore. I can handle making mistakes now." This approach felt awkward at first. It went against everything I had learned about positive thinking and mental health. But the results were undeniable. The thoughts started coming less frequently. When they did come, they felt less intense and scary. Most importantly, I stopped feeling like there was something fundamentally wrong with me for having these thoughts. The healing process wasn't instant or linear. There were days when I would slip back into fighting my thoughts out of old habit. There were periods when new layers of old pain would surface and I would feel overwhelmed again. But each time I remembered to welcome my thoughts instead of fighting them, I got a little bit stronger and a little bit more peaceful. What amazed me most was how this approach started affecting other areas of my life. When I stopped being afraid of my own thoughts, I became less afraid of taking risks. When I stopped judging myself for having negative emotions, I became more accepting of other people's struggles. When I learned to be compassionate with my own inner critic, I naturally became more compassionate with others. The imposter syndrome thoughts still come up sometimes, especially when I'm doing something new or challenging. But now, when they appear, I don't panic. I don't spend hours trying to talk myself out of them. I simply welcome them, listen to what they're trying to tell me, and respond to the scared part of myself with understanding and love. This is why I'm so passionate about sharing this approach with others. I know what it's like to live in fear of your own mind. I know how exhausting it is to be constantly fighting thoughts that keep coming back stronger. I know how isolating it feels to believe that something is fundamentally wrong with you for having normal human emotions and fears. But I also know that there's another way. I know that your thoughts aren't your enemies, even when they feel like it. I know that your mind is actually trying to help you heal, even when it seems like it's trying to hurt you. I know that the thoughts that scare you most are often pointing toward your greatest opportunities for freedom and peace. As we explore this healing journey, we discover that our greatest teachers often come disguised as our worst enemies. What we see as broken in us is actually what's ready to be made whole. But the secret of transformation is welcoming what we've been pushing away. Just like a wound needs air to heal, our inner pain needs our attention to transform. Ultimately, our journey with our thoughts is a journey back home to ourselves. I hope this knowledge will be the gentle hand that guides you through your healing, helping you find peace with every part of yourself. Right now, as you finish reading these words, you have a choice to make. You can continue treating your negative thoughts as enemies that need to be defeated, problems that need to be solved, or evidence that something is wrong with you. Or you can begin to see them as they really are, messengers from the deepest, wisest part of yourself that loves you enough to point you toward what needs healing. This choice isn't just about your thoughts, it's about your entire relationship with yourself. When you learn to welcome your thoughts, you're learning to welcome all parts of yourself. You're discovering that nothing about you is unacceptable, nothing about you is too broken to be loved, and nothing about you needs to be hidden or ashamed. The path I've shared with you today isn't always easy, but it's profoundly worth it. When you stop fighting your own mind, you discover an inner peace that no external circumstance can disturb. When you stop judging your thoughts, you find a self-acceptance that no amount of approval from others could ever provide. When you start listening to your inner wisdom, you discover that you've had the answers you were seeking all along. Remember that healing happens in layers and waves. Be patient with yourself as you learn this new way of being. There will be days when you forget and go back to fighting your thoughts. That's normal and human. There will be times when the old pain feels overwhelming as it comes up to be healed. That's actually a sign that the process is working. There will be moments when you doubt whether this approach is really helping. That doubt is just another thought that needs your loving attention. Your mind isn't broken. Your thoughts aren't wrong. You're not failing at being human. You're just ready to discover what your thoughts have been trying to teach you all along. You're ready to find out that the very things you've been running from are actually running toward you with gifts of healing and freedom. Every time you choose curiosity over fear, acceptance over resistance, and love over judgment, you're not just healing yourself, you're contributing to the healing of our entire world. When you stop being afraid of your own inner experience, you give others permission to do the same. When you model self-compassion, you teach others that it's possible. When you find peace with your own thoughts, you become a living example that transformation is real and possible. The negative thoughts that visit you aren't signs that you're spiritually failing or mentally weak. They're signs that you're human, that you've experienced pain, and that your mind loves you enough to keep pointing you toward healing until you're ready to listen. Today, you can start listening. Today, you can begin the journey from fear to friendship with your own mind. Today, you can discover that your greatest enemy has been your greatest teacher all along. Your healing journey starts with the very next thought that tries to scare you. Instead of running from it, welcome it home. Instead of fighting it, listen to its message. Instead of hating it, love the part of yourself that it's trying to protect. This is how you transform your relationship with your mind. This is how you find peace with every part of yourself. This is how you discover that you've never been broken. You've always been whole, just waiting to remember.